So whether you are with Democracy NC or thank you, Joselle, whether you are with Democracy NC or you are with another organization or you are organizing all on your own, you have a full and complete tool set to make what your change in your community is going to be. I wanted to start off with something that really touches everybody that we all need to know more of, no matter what position of organizing you're at. And that's misinformation and disinformation, especially online. But we will also be talking about how misinformation and disinformation happens in person as well. I'm admitting somebody. Give me just a second, letting these folks in. So I'll be starting with the presentation. That presentation will be about 45 minutes long. We'll also be watching some excerpts of videos produced by Democracy NC and our staff members that go into touch. This whole presentation will be recorded, so if you do not want to show up on recording, I encourage you to keep your video off if you don't mind. It's always amazing to see your beautiful faces, and I would love if you turned your cameras on. At the end of this presentation, I will segue into next month's presentation, which will be more skill set exam. Ooh, those are not the words I'm looking for, which will be more hands-on learning on how to identify misinformation and disinformation. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So if you need to drop off for any reason, this will be recorded and sent to you, as well as the resources and sources I use to develop this training in the first place. We are at about 6:10. Giselle is giving us some helpful tips in the chat. If you have any questions, we use our Q&A. I will be checking that occasionally, and answering. There will be sections where your questions get answered during the presentation, so we don't get too in the nitty-gritty. Yeah. I think I am going to begin sharing my screen. Let me make sure I don't have anything else up. Oh yeah, we're in business, y'all. Share. Bam. Bam. Oh yeah. And we can all see this. And I'm hitting present, and we're hitting full screen. And we're in. Welcome to Democracies NC's episode 1 of our volunteer empowerment series. Today's topic is going to be on misinformation versus disinformation. How are they related? How are they different? And how are they both making sharing information very difficult? We're going to start off with some definitions. What are the definitions of misinformation? What are the definitions of disinformation? And what is the difference? So misinformation is defined as false information that is spread regardless of whether there is intent to mislead. Disinformation is deliberately misleading or biased information. Think manipulated narrative or facts and propaganda. The difference is intention. So if I were to be telling you about an event, let's say there's a vendor market in the community, and I tell you, oh, the vendor market is this Sunday and it starts at 3, but it's actually this Sunday and it starts at 2. I have engaged in misinformation. Now, did I intend to mislead you or trying to affect your ability to go to this vendor market? No, I have made a mistake and then shared it. That's misinformation. Now, let's say we take that same vendor market and I say, oh, it's this Saturday and it starts at 3. And you can only come in if you pay $15. Because I don't want you going to the vendor market. Maybe they didn't accept my booth. Maybe I don't like what their topic is, but I am purposely trying to mislead you. I'm purposely trying to make sure that you do not attend this vendor market by giving you incorrect information. This is disinformation. Now, I'm going to try not to get too lost in the sauce, because if you say misinformation versus disinformation too many times, it will become the same word. So for big, not higher level, for to make things easier, I'll probably be using misinformation specifically throughout this thing, just to keep the flow going. But I'm gonna say it one more time. Misinformation, oopsie. Disinformation, I'm telling a lie. And the difference is intention. We are going to start by watching this video produced by the wonderful and illustrious Joselle Torres. And the person speaking in it is Marquez Thompson. He's our organizing director. I think he's one of Democracy NC's like crowning achievements because he started off as a volunteer and now he is the organizing director here, which is to say, wherever you are starting from, there is a place in the movement and in activism for you. Now, I will stop hyping my coworkers up for a second and go ahead and play the video. And we're only going to be watching about the first 5 minutes. This video will be sent afterwards so that you can watch the whole thing. Hitting play, and we're in. Can y'all hear that? Can I get some thumbs up from the people? Bad, can't hear it. Okay. Oh, now I'm just clicking stuff. Let me figure out what I am doing wrong. Can't hear that. Still can't hear that? Okay. We've been doing the Zoom thing since 2020, and you think I would have all of the information stored in my brain about how to run this. Where's Alicia when you need them? Enjoying their evening. If y'all would give me just a second to troubleshoot. Bring the Zoom back up. Please stop sharing my screen. Thank you. Share. Please share. Turn on original sound at the top. Oh, everybody's trying to help. I am so sorry. Maybe doing that, including the URL in chat. Thank you, Heather. I will definitely drop that in the chat. I think I've gotten to the bottom of it. We're in business. I had to click this little button right here, the share sound. Shouldn't have been that difficult. Okay. And can you all see this now? Are we in? Thumbs up. And this is it. Can y'all hear that now? Thank you for all the assistance.
Hey friends, welcome back to another installment of Built by Us, a video series built by and for the people. If you've heard of Built by Us before, that's because this spawned from our incredible podcast. So be sure to tune in anywhere you listen to your podcasts on Apple or Spotify or wherever. Today, we're talking about misinformation and who is she, because it's getting wild out there, y'all. Mis and disinformation is spreading like wildfire for this 2024 general election, amongst other things. And we want to make sure we can give you the tools to be able to spot, identify disinformation, what to do when you see it, and how to stay informed with good, factual information. Today, we have an expert, Marquez Thompson, who's our organizing director, here to talk about mis and disinformation. Marquez was born and raised in Eastern North Carolina and cares about issues such as education, workers' rights, social justice, and civil rights. He's a Harvard-trained organizer and has done incredible work not only in the eastern part of North Carolina, but across the entire state. Welcome, Marquez.
Thanks for having me. This is so cool.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining us today. So today we're talking about mis and disinformation. And to give our viewers a little background, misinformation is false or inaccurate information, getting the facts wrong. Disinformation is false info deliberately intended to mislead, so intentionally misstating the facts. So misinfo would be your friend getting the restaurant wrong you're all supposed to meet at because you didn't check your text. And disinformation is your friend telling you a completely different restaurant because she didn't want to see you tonight.
That's fine.
Yes, but yes, Marquez, tell me all about mis and disinformation and what you're seeing as one of our statewide organizers.
Yeah, so as you said, it's a big problem. We see it all over the state. And listen, it's something that has hit me personally and my own family, just to show you how rampant it is. So, I come from a household that, I would consider to be, educated and, in the know and stuff. That's how I kind of got my passion for what I do now. And I was talking to my mom the other day, and she just told me just something that was just a straight up lie that's just out there in the media. And she told it to me as though it was just the truest thing in the world. In fact, that wasn't a point that she was trying to make. She was asking me about help for my brother in some of the situations. She said, and she just told this lie about, where money is going to immigrants and this kind of thing. And she just as though that was just true and just what it was. And I just saying, what? I was shocked to hear it. Because I just, it's like the TV is coming into my real life, it's on my phone. And
Entertainment news.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it was causing real harm because she was thinking that something that should have been available to my family was not going to be, and this was the reason why. So again, what's supposed to her, and I had to tell her, Mom, that number one, that's not true at all. And we went over some things that people need to do. I said, Mom, anytime you hear something, I was like, where'd you hear that? She heard it from her aunt, from my aunt, from her sister. I said, Mom, you got to check everything you hear. I don't care where you hear it from. You got to go to a news source and check it, and then check it twice. Like just because you see it in one place, unless I see something in multiple places, trusted places, I don't trust it. And I definitely don't say it. I say, because you don't know what's true in this day. You have to be very vigilant about the truth in this day and age. So anyway, so then after I told her that, she was like, well, what about this? What about that? There were about three things that she told me other than that were also falsehoods that she was now questioning because she realized that wasn't true. And so hopefully people like hearing this conversation will think about some of the lies that they might have been told, or at least check where you heard stuff and if it's true, because you don't want to go around believing something that's not true.
Yeah, we can't be careless with the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to be in it.
Yeah. And then what did Joseph say? We cannot be careless with the truth. And it's really easy how we're set up now that the truth and the facts are being not only mishandled, miscared for, but completely fabricated as well. One of the reasons I wanted to show this videos is not just to make you listen to the definition one more time, but also to acknowledge that falling into the traps of misinformation and disinformation, which I will be saying misinformation from now on, is not something that only happens to other people, to less educated people. It's not something that happens to people who just care less about what's going on in the world. We are all susceptible to it. And one of the biggest ways to fall into somebody's plot, into somebody's scheme, is to think that you are above it. The moment that you think that, you have done step one. And I have been guilty of spreading misinformation before, as most of us will find ourselves to have been guilty. I want to take a moment, though, and really have a bit of a pause. If you could put into the chat, if you are feeling vulnerable and want to share with the community, if you could put into the chat moments in which you have realized you have spread misinformation or disinformation to your community or to your folks. And the reason why I want to go through this exercise is because one of the things that prevents us from showing up earnestly and honestly in our activism and in our work is shame. To think I have not been the best that ever could be, and I feel ashamed about that. I'm going to stop presenting for just a moment so that I can also look in this chat and see what's going on. I'll give this maybe until 6:24 for anybody who would like to share. I'm going to stop yapping myself for a second and allow some silence for reflection. Just a little silent dance while we silently reflect. Oh, it's 6:24. I'd like to say a big shout out to Liz for what you put, because this is also one of the tactics. We're going to get into it later. I don't want to get too lost in the sauce of how to determine if something might fall into the category of misinformation. And this is also how I end up very often. Not very often. I try to be better about it. Let me give myself some credit. But this is how I have found myself falling into it too, is I read something, even if it's just a headline or a byline, not even the whole article, not even getting the whole breadth of information, and just getting mad and being like, how could this happen? How could they do this? What happened? Who did it? I don't even have the answers to that questions, but because my nervous system has been activated, because my beliefs might be being played upon, it kind of shuts down your ability to look beyond that. And that is one of the biggest dangers when it comes to misinformation, is limiting our perspective and our ability to figure out what's going on around us. Now, I am going to be telling you how to get into that. But before we do that, I want to tell you about some tangible ways that misinformation is showing up in your life and where you may be finding it. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. I believe that I am in charge of this now, and it believes in me as its leader. Okay, so starting with misinformation, I just wanted to give an example of how this has showed up, like in real life before. A news media site releases incorrect information on when polling sites will be open. They retract their article and post a new one with correct information, acknowledging the previous mistake. This is misinformation. They say the election day is on the 21st. It is actually on the 22nd. These are don't look too hard. These are fictional names and numbers. Okay, don't look too hard. Okay. Thank you. Hypothetically, it says it's gonna. They said it was gonna be on the 21st. It's actually on the 22nd. And the important thing is, I wanted to put in this example, is what do you do once you realize you've done a little bit of misinformation? They go on and they take the page down, or they put a big edit at the top, and they say, no, big bad. We should not have said that. This is the correct information, actually. That is a form of how misinformation might show up and how you might spot it. If people, especially if trusted news sites and fact givers, can go back and say, this is the mistake that we've made, it's a pretty good sign. Disinformation, this is very real. This happened in Texas, and I'm going to read the text off of the screen for you, because if I try to freeball it, I'm going to ruin it. Texas officials had to refute a voter fraud conspiracy theory after Fox News personality Maria Bartiromo, sorry to you, ma'am, shared it on social media. Her post falsely claimed that hundreds of immigrants were getting IDs at local DMVs and registering to vote simultaneously. DPS spokesperson Sergeant William Lockridge dismissed the claim, emphasizing that assuming non-white Texans in line for licenses were undocumented immigrants was kind of racist. I left that last part in. That was because I wanted you to know that this type of rhetoric is kind of racist. It's a nice way to put it. But in this case, the disinformation is that it was never true. There was never based in factuality. And the reason why the information was shared was to get people questioning in their election security. And the reason why you want people to question election security is to influence elections. This happened in the country, in the elections in which we live in. And I'm sure plenty of folks, I don't want to assume everything that you consume, I'm sure plenty of folks have heard this rhetoric that illegal aliens were voting in our elections, no matter what racist diatribe it was covered in. That is something that we actually had to take time out of our days to talk about and to discuss when there was other real things going on. So this is how way that disinformation has shown up in our country in real life. Okay, off the soapbox, onward. Where does it come from? Big top one, state actors. think propaganda machines. Think governments that would desire you to not have a full grip of understanding on what's happening around you. I would feel the safe example, the example that we to give would be the Russian government. Now, everybody likes to talk about Russian propaganda while pretending that other governments, maybe some closer to home, do not also engage in this. But think Russian propaganda set out to misinform or disinform people about the war in Ukraine, about our elections, about our politics. Okay, state actors. The second one is paid actors. Some people run what we might know as troll farms, or, and I hate to use this term, fake news sites. That's how you better understand it. That put out information that is absolutely 100% not true. I'm going to take a break to give you an example because we think it always has to do with politics, but it's not always politics. My mother sent me an article saying, hey, did you know it's illegal in North Carolina for landlords to charge you a pet deposit? And I was like, oh, that's great. I have this little furry little dude in my house and I'm tired of paying the deposit on him. And then I thought about it. That seems a little too good to be true. And the site in which we found this information, it wasn't a satire site that you might know of. Those are popular, like The Onion, where they produce funny things, but they are honest about being satire. This was a site that simply posted untrue, not factual news articles. That's disinformation. And it's probably not a government either, but they are making money, mostly ad money on things like this. The third thing is bad info. Maybe your source just wasn't quite up to par. Maybe some of the things were true, but not quite all of it. If you check a Wikipedia article, and Wikipedia is not as bad as people say it is, but it is still open to the public, and maybe 75% of the information was true, and that one community edit really misled you, whether it was on purpose or not. Misinformation, disinformation. Where does it come from? You. When you share a link that you didn't look at. When you're talking in a conversation about things you might not quite know all of the information too. And I really want us to understand from looking at these four things that it's not all about politics. Sometimes it's just about the things that are happening around us. Misinformation, disinformation. Have you heard of gossip before? How does that affect our actual communities on and offline? Your desire and I'm not above it. I'd be telling a little gossip every now and then. Okay, I also like to kiki like everybody else. But when you are sharing information about other people's lives and events that are happening in your community without knowing the full extent of it, or by not providing the full perspective, you need to ask yourself, am I engaging in real life, tangible misinformation versus disinformation? Online, you're just sharing things willy-nilly. You didn't quite look at it hard enough. Yes. Now I want to pause and stop for some Q&A. Do we have any questions in the Q&A, Joselle? We do not have any questions in the Q&A. Okay. Then I'm going to stop presenting for a moment. And if we could all go back to this chat real quick. We don't have any questions. Do we have any thoughts, observations, things you want to share? Come on, let's get that community knowledge in the chat now. The most effective disinformation contains some elements of truth. Yeah, shout out to Peter, who's already dropping resources for checking information in the chat. I love that. Thank you so much, Peter. I try to get info from credible sources of journalism. The AP is an excellent source. Yeah, on it. While it doesn't cover everything, AP News, Heather. Yeah, everybody get in the chat right now. People are dropping gems. I'm going to look through it for a second. I have friends that often share videos that discuss current headlines that seem to be intended at making people mad. That's from Crystal. Okay. I realized in the last few months that someone I trusted was not a reliable narrator, and many things I have shared with my kids. I have had to go back and start double checking things I assumed to be true as I find the source wasn't reliable. That's from Jen. Thank you so much, Jen. Um, Scrolling back down, we should verify info from several different sources. Y'all are trying to take my job or something. I'm trying to teach you, okay? This is my training, okay? You're giving a lot of resources and a lot of good information in the chat, and I love it. Yeah, fairly popular YouTube that fact checks himself. This video is about some of his beliefs. Yeah. Not all disinformation is false. Oftentimes, key facts or context can be withheld to turn facts into disinformation. That is called malinformation. And the only reason I didn't say it is because I did not want to get lost in the sauce. But you are absolutely 100% misinformation. It's not true, but I didn't mean to tell you a lie. Disinformation, it's not true, and I'm lying. Malinformation is it's true, but I have a very particular reason to be telling you, or I am twisting that truth. The biggest form of malinformation that takes up my brain space is you might have heard this dog whistle from white supremacists is the 13%, 50%. That is malinformation. Now, do the stats come out like that? I don't want to get too lost in the sauce. It's taking something to make it a narrative, to twist it into a narrative. So thank you so much, Jeff, for bringing malinformation to the point. I am going to stop looking at this chat now. Someone put ground news. Yep. I say when I see something on the television I want to share with my husband, I have to verify with the newspaper or check online to make sure I have the information correct. I am very happy to see that this cohort is already in the mix. I think it's very important, not only that y'all came to this particular training session tonight, but it's obvious that it's something you've already been thinking about and thinking about how to navigate. And so I'm going to explain less. It seems like, I don't want to leave anyone behind. We're all on different levels or anything, but I'm going to keep it pushing. And I really like where this is going. Nice. How do you determine what the right source is? We get into it, John. We get into it. Okay, onwards. I'm going to reshare my screen. Y'all keep putting in the chat. We'll come back. Yeah. Okay. Onwards. Where does it come from? Where does it live? Where are you going to find misinformation? Easiest one, social media. That's Twitter or X, formerly known as Twitter, because we don't dead name here. That's Facebook. That's TikTok. And the messy thing about social media is I'm going to tell you how it gets messy. The thing that is unfortunate is, does misinformation and disinformation live on social media? Yes. What also lives on social media? The truth. So can we just discard all of these resources of communication that we have had? No. But with some caveats, we do need to protect ourselves. And on the next slide, I'm going to tell you some steps that Democracy NC has taken to protect our information and our audience. The next thing is blogs and podcasts. This is not necessarily, you might see it on social media, but it's being produced in studios. This is where the private actors come into play. So let's take your favorite conspiracy theory. Can I say his name, Joselle? Let's take Mr. Joe Rogan, a man with a tentative relationship to the truth. He spreads misinformation and disinformation often, and it's kind of his whole shtick. And when I say private actors paid for it, I'm talking about folks like this. But that's where you might hear some things. And what makes it difficult is when it's coming from individuals, is we are less trusting of big institutions. Of course, we have our reasons for how we got there. And there is a trend to now trust individuals, which, if we live in community, we have to have some of that. But do you verify what those individuals are saying? And what if they put it in just the smoothest, sexiest wrapper ever? What if the lighting is perfect? All of the visuals and the graphics are great. The sound design is popping off. The script is amazing. The people presenting the information to you are attractive. Can these things prevent you from seeking the sources better? Yes, because we're not above it. But that is a thing to be concerned about. Tech deserts. Ooh, Joselle, I know we edited this slide together. I don't know what that means. I'm so sorry.
I can chime in. Yeah. So think about rural North Carolina. Think about Western North Carolina, where the hurricane, not only this year, of past years, in places like Lumberton and places like Buckham County, like there are tech deserts in North Carolina where people do not have access to the internet, that do not have access to larger publications. I know in Elizabeth City and in northeastern North Carolina, all of their news is from Virginia. They don't get North Carolina news. Everything they get is Virginia based. So that's really a tech desert, a news desert. And those places exist in mass across North Carolina, particularly when things like infrastructure, cybersecurity, and those things are underfunded by at the county level.
Wow, I just learned something in my own training. And the fourth thing is, and I want to bring it back to home. Are you coming up with stuff that maybe is not based off of all of the facts? Are you spreading information that you haven't verified? Do people trust you to tell them what's going on? Especially when it comes to this activism world that we may all very much exist in. We become pillars of our community. Very excited to have you here. And then people begin to come to you. What's going on with the voting? Where do I get these resources? I'm having a hard time figuring out what's going on in the news. If you are a trusted person in your community, do you trust your sources? And if you don't, or if you haven't put much thought into it, it's worth considering that a lot of the misinformation that we meet on a day-to-day basis can be malicious and on purpose. But let's not miss out on those that are well-meaning and not on purpose. Always got to check yourself before you check anything else. Anyway, how are corporations complicit? Because I'm tired of blaming you. I'm blaming the corporations in this slide. Let's talk about the broligarchy, a term that I have been recently introduced to by Giselle. I'm going to read you off of these slides, and I'll give some examples in there. What is the broligarchy? A small group of ultra-wealthy tech billionaires who hold the reign of major social media platforms, putting profit above truth and accountability. Think Elon Musk and X. Think Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. Think whoever owns Google. You see, I don't even know the name of that. I'm gonna Google it right now. No, I'm focused. I'm not Googling it right now. Yeah. So what's going on at TikTok? I know TikTok has been in the news, especially at the end and the beginning of the year. Things have changed on there. So while claiming to moderate content, TikTok actively censors political discussions, letting misinformation flourish instead. Activists and independent journalists often find themselves banned. So this is not just the proliferation of misinformation, it's also the censorship of people who are trying to bring the real truth to the forefront. So this does get mixed up in censorship a lot. And that makes it difficult. A lot of people get their information off of TikTok. A lot of people use it as a search engine and you may feel one way or the other about it, but we live in a society. This is where we are at. And there were systems in place to make sure that at least there was some oversight on what was being shared. That is ostensibly no longer on the platform. So what does that mean for people who have ostensibly gotten most of their information from it? Then we have Meta, which is not just one thing. Let's think Facebook and Instagram, and I think their new thing, Threads. The US fact-checking program has been replaced with community notes, which lacks any professional oversight. The shift enables the unfiltered spread of political propaganda and conspiracy theories. Also, something very prevalent on Facebook is the sharing of AI-generated photos, which can also be used to proliferate misinformation and disinformation. We have X, and I'm not gonna get worked up about it. I'm not gonna get worked up about it. But trust and safety teams have been dismantled, resulting in a spike in hate speech and misinformation. Verified users can now pay for visibility, allowing false narratives to spread with minimal moderation. Also, X and the X let me get my words together. Changing the block function. So even if you block someone who is doing misinformation, they may still pop up on your timeline. Think Gronk, X's AI, which is actively spreading misinformation. You can ask, like, who was the 44th president of the United States of America? And you're not going to get the answer that you think you're going to get. There's a lot of different things that are happening on these social media platforms that's making it harder to navigate and putting more of the onus of fact checking on the individual. Is this very difficult? Yes. Is it inconvenient? Yes. Is this the world we live in? Also, yes. So I want to make sure amongst all of these things that are happening on some of the most popular ways of communicating with each other, that we are doing our individual due diligence to protect our community. Let me tell you how Democracy NC has done some due diligence to protect ourselves and you as our advocates. Actually, Joselle, can I pass this over to you?
Yeah, sure thing. I do. On this slide right here is a snippet of our press statement where on July 31st, a coalition of statewide advocacy groups, including ourselves, the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, Emancipate North Carolina, El Pueblo, and Pro-Choice North Carolina, and North Carolina for the People NC in Action, came together to officially depart from X. We suspended any paid accounts, removed any marketing ads. We posted on our walls on X saying we no longer are participating on this platform, and you can find us on these alternative channels. We know that when Elon Musk bought X in 22, which feels like so long ago, but it's not. It has grown into this propaganda machine up into where last week, because of the Dodge program that Musk is running, he's threatening major ad agencies. I'm talking about like multi-billion dollar ad agencies to promote on X or face government intimidation. So like he is literally now weaponizing his um government efficiency program, and targeting multi-million dollar ad campaigns to put their money on X or else. And so you can choose where you want to consume information, share information, spread joy, spread positive, fun things. And those platforms can be Blue Sky, it could be Threads, it can be Meta, and it can be on TikTok. Like it can be on these platforms. It's just about being responsible. And so, in earnest, our responsibility was to not be participate in a platform that is owned by white supremacists and being weaponized for a authoritarian initiative.
And before you go off mute, Giselle, can I get a time check?
Yeah, we're at 6:47 and we still have 78 participants in this room. Give yourselves a round of applause. Yay, yay, yay. You are here. You're wanting to learn. There's so much happening right now. And I think that's another thing. When we think of a propaganda machine, part of Project 2025 was to blast, to like obliterate the news cycle in the first few weeks and months. That is part of the Project 2025 strategy. That is part of this authoritarian initiative that's happening at the federal level, but also happening at the state level. North Carolina is known for being the poster child of barriers to vote and voter infringement and anti-democracy initiatives. We saw that also happen with the lame duck session the past few months before we were able to flip the majority at the state legislature. And so I say all of that to know that you being here and being in this moment and sharing in resource and sharing in trust and sharing in community, we can be those trusted sources. Like people already, you're probably that political person in the group. Like if you're here tonight, you're probably the person that your friends texted when they needed to know like where to vote or how to vote on their ballot or XYZ. So be that person that when the next bomb comes down from this administration, you're there with correct and factual news, ready to embrace one another.
Boy, 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 boy. It all starts with you. You're doing a good job, by the way. We're moving on to what can you do? This is what we've been, a lot of people have been asking about, and I want to give you a brief intro into media literacy. Why I say brief is because this was just an educational model, this particular training series, episode 2, also educational, but that's when I want to get into the hands-on practicalities of navigating the internet and conversations. So we're not going to get all the way into the nitty-gritty here, but I didn't want to give you the information and then give you no tools to move about with. So here we can do the definition and importance of media literacy. Media literacy is the ability to critically analyze and evaluate information across platforms. And some 4 quick ways, I'll lean in, to identify and combat misinformation. First and foremost, you're already doing. Be a truth seeker. Develop a strong desire to verify and uncover factual information. You have to be a person who is desperate for the truth, for the honesty, and for the facts, so that there is nothing that you are going to read or come in contact with that is not going to pique your curiosity and get you looking further. That's the first thing. I'm trusting, I think, pretty sure we're already all on that same base because we are all here tonight, this evening. And the second is question everything, even and especially the things you already agree with. We can get stuck, you might have heard it, the echo chambers, the bubbles, the thought bubbles, all of those things like that. We can fall into those. That doesn't just happen to a certain type of person with a certain type of politics. It can easily happen to us. When you run across information that reestablishes what you already believe in, if you're like, yes, all of this aligns with the things I believed before, my thoughts, my community, my actions, be not necessarily suspicious, but stay curious in the way in which you're like, that too needs to be verified. I can't just take it for its word because it's something I would like to believe is true. The third one, check your sources. If you are reading an article, and we're going to get into the think before you link, if you're reading an article, especially one that is verifiable from a trusted news source, they will tell you where they got their information from, and they will tell you in a way in which you can also go and find it. If you are watching things like documentaries, or I'm a huge fan of like YouTube documentaries created by individual creators. That's a nonsense sentence. But those folks, if they are verifiable, if they are trying to lead you down a path of truth, they will tell you where they got their information from. Before you repeat a thing that you say out loud, ask yourself, where did I get that information from? And it's okay to double check yourself. And even if you're like, yeah, I read it here, here, and here, go ahead and make sure that those sources are still up to date. And the biggest one, something that you can start today, that will make a huge difference tomorrow, is think before you link. Be sure to read the full article before sharing with others. Headlines are meant to bait users. And I can't remember the exact name of the person who put it in the chat, but they said that oftentimes they'll read something and in reaction want to share it with their husband because it made them upset. This is called clickbait. This is a huge tool that people who are trying to spread misinformation are going to use. If you read something, and this is I want to reiterate this because this is the tip I have to give to myself when I'm navigating the internet. If I read something and it makes me mad beyond belief, like foaming at the mouth. If I can feel my nervous system is activated, I need to start thinking very critically about my next steps. I need to think, is this even a place worth getting the information from? Could I find this information somewhere else? Should I go there? Should I even engage with this in the first place? These are the very first things you can do. Think before you link. Read the whole article. Okay, and we're going to end with a little video before I open it up to Q&A, because we are reaching the end of our session. And this is, we're not going to watch the whole 26 minutes. This will also be shared at the end. Our illustrious DeMonte, our regional organizer near the Fayetteville region, Southeast, is talking in this PBS episode. And they also give, once again, the definition of misinformation, but some tips on navigating it. I'm clicking it now. I think we can all hear everything. Yeah.
Just ahead on Black Issues Forum, in today's digital world, information is everywhere. But what happens when that information isn't accurate, or worse, when it's deliberately false? We're diving into the world of misinformation and disinformation, examining the role technology, social media, and even artificial intelligence play in spreading falsehoods, and exploring how we can fight back. Coming up next, stay with us.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting PBS-NC.
Welcome to Black Issues Forum. I'm your host, Kenya Thompson. Well, in our interconnected age of technology, social media has become a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's a powerful tool for empowerment and education, but on the other, it's also become a platform where misinformation and disinformation spread like wildfire. And unfortunately, these misleading narratives often have devastating effects, particularly on those within the Black community. And as the days go by, we're getting closer and closer to Election Day. We just want to make sure that you know what's what. So in today's conversation, we're breaking down the myths and revealing some truths. And to help us do just that, I want to welcome our guest to the show. We have with us Lamar Bryan, a regional organizer in the Triangle and a marketing communication consultant. And with him here, we have regional managing organizer at Democracy NC, DeMonte Alford. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. So I want to break down, before we dig into this, the meat of the conversation, I want to define for our audience what is misinformation and disinformation.
I am going to make you listen
Lamar,
to it
I'll
again.
start with you. Tell us, what is misinformation?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So misinformation and disinformation, I like to think of them as cousins first.
Right.
So misinformation is when people are spreading information or false information, and they don't realize that it is false, or they don't necessarily realize that it is harming people. So misinformation is a bit different from disinformation.
So what I'm hearing from you is that it's not intentional.
Not at all.
It's like maybe hearing from my cousin, and
Right.
they heard from their cousins, and we think is true.
Right.
And now we keep spreading this information.
Or you see an article that might have the wrong picture on it,
Yeah.
and you of course, you're not a journalist or a reporter, so you don't know that picture is incorrect. So you're just sending that or spreading that through social media.
Okay. Still harmful, but not intentional.
Right.
So, DeMonte, disinformation.
So it's very easy for misinformation to slide into disinformation. Once folks begin to weaponize and use misinformation maliciously, whether they're twisting facts, they're manipulating stories, or creating narratives for propaganda reasons, we would categorize all of this as disinformation, which has a tremendous harmful effect on folks.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about those harmful effects. Let's talk about some of the tactics. How is disinformation used, for example, in a political election? Lamar, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so misinformation and disinformation is, in a nutshell, fake news. And so you have to think about like candidates spreading fake news, because they know that if they say something that is of interest to a community, they would vote for them. Or disinformation is used when you're talking about voting, giving out the wrong voter dates.
Right.
And of course, we know that slides into disinformation because, you know, those dates are incorrect, unfortunately. Creating websites, creating social media campaigns or platforms that talk about one candidate over the other, i.e., an example would be Kamala Harris putting thousands of black people in prison or jail. And so those things are sort of disinformation, and you can kind of tell a little bit of it, especially if it's very twisted.
Right.
And you know that it's just not the truth.
A bit extreme,
Right.
you kind of raise a brow.
Right.
Demonte, what are some examples of using disinformation and misinformation as methods to manipulate voters?
Easy example is preemptively claiming fraud before an election happens, creating distrust and fear and panic in the procedures and the way the vote is counted and it takes place. So claiming that machines are connected to internet, which is hacked by Venezuelan dictators that have passed away.
Right.
Another example would be creating fear of non-citizens voting, which we know is already illegal. So it creates this panic that folks tend to spread.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we hear it, if we're seeing it come from the news, we're reading it in the newspaper or a magazine or an article, how can the average person, I mean, I know I'm in media, right? You guys are well informed, ear to the ground, but not everybody has that luxury. Right. How do we know what's real?
Right. So for me, honestly, we all received text messages throughout the last several months in regards to election day candidates. For me, I would say this most simple way of knowing that these things are false is misspellings. I mean, that is very, very easy to kind of decipher whether or not information is accurate or not, but also knowing or not even being able to understand the website codes or the website itself. If you've never seen this website before, or you're like, wow, this website came out of left field, 9 times out of 10, you know those websites aren't true. But you always want to go fact check. You want to go fact check that bit of information to ensure that it is false. And of course, I found, you know, that candidates are starting to spread misinformation closer we get to November 5th.
Right.
So we know that oftentimes, unfortunately, candidates could be those that are spreading false narratives to ensure that the other candidate they are going against just doesn't win.
Yeah, they sometimes are spearheading that effort. Demonte, during the pandemic, we saw a lot of misinformation and disinformation around COVID. Right, and that impacted Black communities greatly. We had people dying as a result of that. Let's talk about how that same impact during election time, what impact does it have on Black communities?
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
At Democracy North Carolina, we have a hotline, our 188 Our Vote hotline, and we keep track of the typical reasons why we get calls. As a result of the disinformation and misinformation about absentee voting, mail-in ballots, and early voting, and the claims of fraud, we have seen that 35% of the calls that we had come into our 1-800 number came from folks with questions about early voting and confusion about early voting, with another 25% of those being about mail-in ballots and questions with that. And we had about 3 or 4% call in with concerns of voter intimidation and harassment and fear.
Okay, I could watch the whole thing with y'all now, but we only have so much time. I wanted to show this because Lamar, who, by the way, I got the phrase "think before you link" from the gentleman in this video, and also to give you some insight on how misinformation and disinformation tangibly affects the community, and also to toot Democracy NC's horn just a little bit. If you ever find yourself wondering what the facts are about voting, about the legislation around early voting and election and voter IDs are, if you want to make sure that you are telling people the correct things, you should rely upon us, Democracy NC. That's our entire bread and butter. And if we give you some information and then you fact check it again, we won't even be mad at you. In fact, I'll be very proud. So when it comes to these particular issues that fall under Democracy NC's umbrella, let us be one of your resources. We do have one of the things like the voter hotlines during elections. So if you are reading things online or in the newspaper or communicating in your interpersonal circles and you need to double check some information, we have got you. Okay. And we are nearing the end now. I want to show you this beautiful QR code. And I want to tell you that before I got the help of Joselle, this QR code did not actually go to where I thought it went because I didn't check my source. I'm not above it. But then I did check my resource, Joselle, and she got me on the right path. If you scan this wonderful, beautiful QR code, it will take you to our Mobilize. This is going to tell you how to get further involved with Democracy NC, other volunteer opportunities we have, and also most importantly, get you to episode 2 of our volunteer empowerment series. I'd like to thank you all for listening to this educational bit, and for anyone who is desiring to get more into the nitty gritty of how to combat misinformation, disinformation. That is what all of episode 2 is going to be. I am going to give you resources to tell you how to check a news site's bias. Some of them have already been shared in the chat by some of our goers, our goer honors. That's not the word I'm looking for as well. Like Snopes, like political fact, things to check your bias, like ground news. All of those things we're going to touch upon. And I am hoping that we are getting kind of comfortable with each other, because I will also want to put us in breakout rooms so that we can look at things in real time and determine as a group when we are looking at misinformation, when we are looking at disinformation, and when we're looking at the real thing. There's also something that Lamar said in that last section that I didn't, that I never mentioned, and I think is a good thing to share. When you're sure the bad thing that you read is true, when you're sure that the thing about the candidate you don't like is true, you need to look that up as well. If it confirms our biases, that is where our blind spots lie. Gonna give us a little summary. I'm actually not gonna read the definition to you again. It'll be the 7th time. But I want to read this last bit. To combat these issues, we should enhance our media literacy. This means verifying facts before sharing, questioning information, especially if it aligns with our beliefs, checking sources for credibility, and engaging with diverse perspectives. Developing these habits is essential for resisting manipulation and protecting democracy. So join us next time. We are going to go through those resources towards the bottom, really get our hands onto media literacy. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I want to take a look at the chat for anybody who has questions or anything that people want to share. But I saw that Liz is not here anymore, but I want to say a big shout out to Liz, to Shirley, to David B for being the first screens that I could see. Your faces is how I made sure that my jokes were still funny. I appreciate you for turning your cameras on. That was awesome of you. I'm gonna take a look at the chat. If you guys have any questions, any ending thoughts, whether it be about this particular thing, what we have coming up next, I'm opening the floor to those things. I might even unmute y'all. Not quite yet. At 7:10, you can suddenly turn your mic on. That's how you know. But I just wanted to scroll up to some things. Wow, there are so many links in this chat. Giselle, is there a way to capture the chat with the recording?
Yeah, we'll send out a link that has the password for you to check out this recording, and it includes all of the great conversations and resources that have been happening in the chat.
Okay, so I'm going to start reading out some things that are really popping off for me here. Leonard says, normally, if you identify the source and they have constantly spread disinformation, one can expect they haven't diverted from their past behavior. Great, believe people when they tell you who they are, including institutions. How do you determine what the right source is? Dang it, John. We're getting into it next time. I didn't answer your question, and I'm sorry, but that is what we are doing next time. I hope that we gave you at least some tertiary tools. That's not what tertiary means. And also, I will be sending out the video and the resources that have some further readings in an email after this. You should wait a day or two. And if you watch the rest of that video with DeMonte and Lamar on PBS, they do go further in depth into this. Consider it homework. Don't consider it that. Consider it prep work for our next training series. Sometimes sources are reliable, but still illegal or unconstitutional. I'm not media trained enough to acknowledge that. I do have something to say, but yeah. The enemies of democracy want you to withdraw from social media. Who is Jeff? Jeff, you don't have to turn your camera on, but you've been putting little gems in here the entire time. Sign up for a volunteer shift, Jeff. I'm trying to talk. Learning how to be a discerning consumer of information is more important than avoiding contact with disinformation. I say it again, Jeff. Send me an email. Yeah, rural areas who have poor quality of internet. Thank you so much for teaching me about tech deserts, Joselle. Of course, I was familiar with the concept, but to have like a name to it and to be able to name when it happens, that's super important. Thank you for imparting that upon me. Peter's dropping some good links in here. Misinformation can be everywhere and anywhere. That is why we need to check more than one source. Shout out to Peggy. Google CEO Sundar. Thank you for putting that in there, because I was really bothering me that I didn't know the answer to that question. Surveillance capitalists. Oh my God. Peter's also dropping gems in here. Peter, go ahead and email me too. Your brain will trick you, learn about how it works, and learn techniques to counter the pitfalls. We're learning the techniques. Episode 2. Doge, yeah, perfect. Don't believe everything you believe. Okay, there's actually, I know I keep saying Jeff, but there's like 3 of you saying absolutely immaculate things in this chat. Beautiful. And I'm research and discuss with trustworthy individuals. That's us, Democracy NC, if it has to do with voting or navigating legislation about voting. We are your trusted resource. I have to go, but great training. Thank you, Leslie. I think I am caught up. Joselle has linked the PBS video. Use all side for news biases. Thank you for that resource. Can I get the QR code via email? And you may. If you want to get in contact with the wonderful Siesa, that's me. My email is Siesa, Siesa, @democracync.org. I am going to release y'all. We're 4 minutes early. I never turned your mics on. I'm going to keep that decision. We're going to get into it next time. We're going to get into little breakout rooms. We're going to hit those examples. We're going to look at real resources on the website. We're going to identify misinformation in real time. I hope you are excited, because I am absolutely thrilled to see you guys here next month to get into the nitty gritty. And I'll even give you a sneak peek into episode 3. Are you ready? Okay, so you figured out how to identify misinformation. You figured out how to combat it. Now, how do you talk to people who love it because you love them without getting into a fist fight? Oh my God. That's super pertinent to the community we're living in. Oh my God. It almost is like that people want us to fight each other all the time. Maybe we're going to figure out how not to do that. And once we figure it out together, then I can figure it out too, because there's a reason I'm not allowed in a Facebook comment section anymore. I'll leave it at that. All right, y'all. I'm going to play you out with a little bit of do. Thanks for coming. Do. Remember to come back again. Do. Stay warm and stay safe this evening. Do. And enjoy your weekend. It's the weekend is over. Enjoy your week. Do. Y'all are not leaving. Come on. Do. There you go. Yeah. Bye, y'all. Thank you so much. See you next month. Be looking out for the resources. We got you in an email. Leave the chat so I can go home. Yeah, thank you. Almost. You're welcome. Thank y'all for coming.